want to change gears a little bit to talk a little bit about cognitive psychology that will also help you deal with stress and help strengthening your mindfulness. To begin with, I think a reframe, another way of looking at something, reframing is taking one set of circumstances and looking at it a little bit differently. So if we look at, I'm stressed. Remember, if you say I'm stressed, to most people it has a negative connotation. You say I'm stressed, you're going to resist that stress, right? So instead of I'm stressed, you can reframe that and say, oh great, I have a high energy level, high adrenaline level, and use the energy. Let's talk about this example of reframing. Mary's upset with her friend who was rude to her yesterday. Really kind of boiling up about that. How do we deal with it? How do we have patience? How do we deal with it when people are rude? Maybe treating you in a way that you don't feel like you deserve to be treated. How can we reframe that? So I'm going to do a scientific experiment right now. You guys are part of it. Getting nervous? Okay. It's really easy. 2 questions. Raise your hand if ever in your life you've ever been rude. Raise your hand. Okay. Good, okay. Now, raise your hand if usually when you were rude, it was when you were happiest and feeling your best. Where did those hands go? So let's think about this, because I've lectured to thousands of people. I always get the same answer. When people are rude, they're almost always suffering in one way or another. Well, why is that important? Because if you can remember that, I mean, instead of saying, how dare Fred treat me that way? How dare that teller or whoever it is treat me in that way? You say, wow, I wonder what's going on with that person. Now, if it's a close friend, you might ask them, hey, what's going on? If it's somebody that's just at the grocery store, you might not, if you don't know the person. But at least if you realize to yourself, hey, I wonder, instead of how dare they treat me that way, what's going on with them? Did they just found out they're losing their job? Did they just found out they failed a math exam? Did they just found out a relative was diagnosed with cancer? There can be bad stuff. Somebody tends to be rude a lot. Do they have chronic pain? Do they have chronic anxiety? Do they have depression? So keep that in mind, and that'll reduce your stress, your hostility. I'm a failure. So after all, that math test didn't go so well, huh? Or you tried to get a job and you just blew the interview. Something didn't go right and you think, I'm a failure. Is there a way we can reframe that? Well, this guy was working on this little invention called a light bulb. I heard of this guy, Thomas Edison. He was messing up, right? He tried time and time again, couldn't get it right. But what he said is that he said, I am not discouraged because every wrong attempt discarded is another step forward. Now think about that. Is anybody here science majors? Science majors? A little bit. Now, in science, how does science work? You find out, oh, it didn't work this way. That means I'll try something else, right? That didn't work. I'll try something else. One of the biggest advances, one of the first chemotherapy agents was, I think, was it Dana-Farber? I might have a name. I think it may have been him, who found out that, well, let's try giving folic acid to these kids that have ALL, because if folic acid just discovered, that'll probably help. And he found that they died more quickly. I don't know about you, but a lot of people would just crawl in a hole and quit after that. He scratched his head and said, oh, I wonder if an antifolate would work then. And that was the first chemotherapeutic agent that helped. So that's the way science works. That's the way you do things. So you want to learn by your failure, when things don't go well. What can I learn from this? Niels Bohr, Nobel laureate. We have some other Nobel laureates at UCSB, which is nice. He said an expert is a man who and now I guess Bob Dylan is a Nobel laureate. Isn't that cool? An expert is a man who has made all the mistakes which can be made in a very narrow field. Niels Bohr. So let's look at this a little bit more. I think this whole failure thing is worth paying attention to. What's helpful when things go wrong and what's not helpful, as far as learning from your mistakes? Not helpful, I'd suggest, dwelling on what you or others should have done, and blaming or berating others, blaming or berating yourself. Why couldn't have I done that? Why didn't you do this different? Oh, it should have been another way. Does that really help at all? And I would suggest no. What's helpful? Take a mindful breath as a good first step. And you might even say, choose wisely because you want to do something that's helpful. Something went wrong. How am I going to respond to this? And there may be an urgent matter. Okay, there may be something has to be, I have to go take a deep breath and, I have to fix this problem right away, run over there and fix it. Okay? There may be something, and then that's the first thing you do. If appropriate, you're going to learn from your failure. So next time, I'm not going to do it that way. Or you might even, right now, I'm going to set up a system so it doesn't happen again. I'm not going to be late to that class because from now on, I'm going to put a reminder on my phone every time. I'm going to have the system all set up, so it's not going to be a problem in the future. And if, of course, apologies are needed, make some heartfelt apologies. Reframing. Macklemore's mother just gave away his best shirt to the thrift store. And he thinks this is a catastrophe. And comes up with a cool song after all, but that's a different story. So how can we reframe this? Well, there's this concept in psychology called catastrophizing. And you say, this or that went wrong, and this is the worst thing ever, it's a nightmare, it's a catastrophe. You can get another shirt. You lost $100. Oh, it's the worst thing ever. So what you want to do when you start catastrophizing is using a more realistic word. Just say this is unfortunate. And talking about that, let's talk in general about creating a better perspective. What do I mean by this? Everybody right now, make a tube with your right hand. Got it? You got a tube with the right. Put it over your right eye. Look through the tube at the screen right there. Look through the tube at the screen. Your left hand, you're going to take your left finger, put it at the other end of the tube so it almost takes up the whole visual field, okay? So the finger, if it was a problem, that would be the hugest problem ever. And look huge. This is a humongous finger, okay? Now, gosh, you got big fingers, lady. So now what I want you to do is open both eyes, take your hand away, put your finger as far away as you can, and then kind of look around and say, it looks smaller, doesn't it? And why does it look smaller? Is because you've got a more realistic perspective now. And what's this analogy? It's that our brains cannot take in all of the information we have at once. So if we're working on a problem, if you're working on a test, if you're working at work and something goes wrong, if you're really working on your finance and you found out you lost several $100s, it seems like it's everything because you're looking just right at it. Right now, if I asked who was listening to the hum of the fan, who is listening to it right now? Can you hear it? You can hear it, right? So it was there, but you weren't tuned into it. Because you can only tune into a small part of everything at once. Who was feeling and thinking about the right big toe? Not many people, unless you're having a gout attack, you can feel it though, right? What about what you had for breakfast yesterday? There's so many things going on that we only tune into what's going on with that particular problem, and that's how we get out of perspective. Well, how do we regain perspective? We remind ourselves of the bigger issues. Worried about you lost $500. Anybody here, would they sell me both of their eyes for $1 million? Anybody? Both their arms, both their legs? No, if you add up those things, your ability to think, you wouldn't sell them for all the gold in the world. So if you can remind, gosh, I'm really thankful that I have my health, that I can see, that I can hear, that I can think, that I can walk. Whatever the blessings you have, just reminding yourself, what do I have? And then all of a sudden that loss of $500 does not seem as big. So that's one way that we can regain that perspective. Now here's examples. Shelley got a poor grade and test really down. Sharon didn't get into her preferred graduate school. Snoop can't get any calls at all on his cell phone since he broke it when he dropped it like it was hot. Okay, let's talk, dropping the mic, huh? Let's talk about thoughts a little bit. Because thoughts, with meditation folks, sometimes thoughts they get a bad rap.